Hey everybody, trying something new here today. Let's get right into this video as fast as we can with as little preamble as possible. Now, the video today is something I think is kind of spectacular, and I hope you do too. It's, can you get to the top three types of chords, minor, major, and dominant seventh, using one pentatonic scale that we all know, using the pentatonic scale. You can do this anywhere, but using this shape that we all know and love, this blues scale shape, and this one place of three notes shown on your screen here. Can we do that today? Yes, you can, and I want to amaze you and show you today. So, that being said, just a couple of things here that I do need to say. I get lucky that I can press the strings today. If my playing sounds a little slow or something, or if I'm a little sloppy, I'm dealing with some gout that I got in this hand here, and just yesterday I couldn't even press a fret on the guitar, being in excruciating pain. Thanks for medication. All right, so we've got this going today, and well, we're using the 5th fret here as seen on the diagram. There was something else I was going to say, but let's forget it and move on, just to be as quick as possible and not waste your time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. So that's where we are today, and let's see how we can pull this off. So the first thing that we're going to need to know is root position. Oh, the thing I was going to say was a volume. As I step around here today, I may be going away from the mic. And also, I believe that I got my levels set properly, but what I hear in my headphones sometimes isn't always what translates through to the final recording. So my apologies if one or the other is too loud or everything is too quiet. I'm doing the best I can with that. All right, so getting into this. So the first thing we need to know is root position for our this pentatonic shape here, and most of you know this already. That minor is on this side. So down here we can see the notes on the E strings here. So we have F, G, and A is where we are today. So if we were playing our shape here on the 5th fret, we would be, and considering the A as our root, we would be playing an A minor. And if we were considering the C as our root, and beginners might say, how do you consider a root? Well, it's not just about your playing. Remember, the world isn't guitar-centric. It's about the rest of the band. You might have a bass player thumping on a C, just something along with the rhythm that's going to indicate to somebody's ear that some note is the root. A, C, E. So we could have a low drone happening. See, I can't barely hammer on. But that hammer on is related to that low A. So it sounds like it's in, like, you're something to do with A minor, but if I played a low C, there, that hammer on, same hammer on, again, sounds congruent, but it sounds a little more major because we're playing, the root is determining whether we are, playing a major pentatonic or within minor pentatonic framework. So that's that. Major and minor, we can get these roots right in this scale, so that should mean that my theory here will work. But, and you might know this already, but we're going to ignore this side root today for our example. And moving on here, so then let's get started with minor, and I haven't fully created the lesson here, so we're just going to kind of build it as we go. So we have, this is what we're going to need to build what do we need to build a minor chord? The next thing we're going to need are what we need to build a minor chord. So we build a minor chord with a shell of root and 5, right? We're here on A is our root today. But we need that middle tone to determine if it's major or minor. So we're going to use either a minor third or a major third, or which was more technically called a flat third. But to make it sense for the beginners, we'll call it a minor third. So we need that minor third note. And guess where that one's going to be? Well, here, this is how you should learn how to find intervals really quick on your guitar. You know what's always above a 5 on a guitar? I'm sorry, well, I gave it away. You know what's always above a root? A 5. And the only time that changes is if you're crossing the B to G string, the little anomaly there. And you have to make that adjustment. But if you can make that one fret adjustment in the right direction, you can always know what note is above a root. So we got a 5. So what note is going to be above the 5? Well, in this particular example, it's going to be the um, flat third. Cool. And then what's going to be above the another way to think about this is here's the root. So what's directly below the root? Skip a string. So here we are on the D string. What's the note directly below a root? That's always a flatted 7. Cool. So very quickly, we can see here that right in our assigned space, we've got root, flat 7, 3, and 5. So, you know, as a technical, I talked about these 3 tones here, but the root is outside of that shape. Okay, but it's still within the pentatonic, and if you were comping on guitar, if the whole thing was, if the bass player was already playing the A and your you know, the A was already happening in the music, you could comp without the root just the same, and that would always work. Here, actually, just to be a little redundant here. There. And just to show you here, if I played that C, same notes, sounds major though, right? All right, we'll get to that. Anyway, so cool. We have kind of discovered really that we can, you know, we can do the whole thing here. So, anyways, that's basically the gist of it. We can get the chord we need with the pentatonic. But some of you are saying, well, yeah, minor pentatonic. I've already known this. So show me where it makes major and dominant 7, because I really dare you to do that, because the dominant 7 is like this shape over here. You know that weird D shape where you gotta hold that root down on the 6th string? How can dominant be in this shape? Well, I'm going to show you. So anyways, especially with just this wall of notes right here. Let me show you. But before we need this, now that we've got our chord tones, what about the other notes here? What do we have? What is all this? Let's find all of our chord tones in here. Let's kind of explore a little bit and see what we find. What's the next from a root? Well, that's going to be the flat third, the root and the flat third. And notice here also as well, something important to note is that I've spaced these out as they exist in the spelling of intervals. So what I mean is, if we filled in all our intervals, they'll fill in the blank spots here exactly. And we did that on purpose. So that's coming up. So we can see here root to flat third, root to flat third. It's the same amount of squares. All right, so we've got that. Where's our 5 then? We can just use our octaves now to figure all that out. Like, you know, here's an octave. Good introduction for a song, but I think Triumph already used that for, is it Hold On? I think that's a song. Anyways, or they use it in the middle. And then they also use that for this old children's show called 3, 2, 1 Contact. Sorry for the rambling. Here we go again. So we need we can use our octaves here. So that tells us where the flat third is. So that tells us that a flat 7 is here. Or we can use our thought that always above a flat third is a flat 7. Here it is again. So then what's going to be right here? Well, what's after the flat third? Probably the an interval that we don't have in our chord here. So we're going to leave that blank for right now. So we're going to have what's after the flat 7 here. Let's go for our octave. That's a root. And then that leaves this one here. Well, that's an octave from where we just were going to leave it blank. Let's leave that blank right now. Then what's after that mystery interval there is a 5. And we can do do that by we could do that by octave in this direction too. We know that 2 strings up and 2 frets over is an octave. 2 strings up, or maybe you could say that 2 strings skipped and 1 string up, so then 3 strings and then 2 frets is an octave. 5. All right, cool. So there we've got a whole pentatonic full of chord tones. So now we have mastery of our chord tones. So if we're in a solo, then I can have all my chord tones available. So you can hear that. What the takeaway there is, you've got your first package of solo devices. It's going to end up being very inside. So you could say it's somewhat vanilla flavored if you heard it against, another soloist playing all these other colors and tones in there. But that's where these are the inside tones, and then everything else starts to become an outside color. So within our pentatonic, we actually have a first step here, and look which one it is here. Notice that in our step from root to root here on the intervals, we have a big giant step between the flat third and the fifth, right? Because as far as steps are concerned, beginners should know this is a half step, this is a whole step. You're pretty much your most common steps. Now this root to third can still be useful as like in a melody line, but see, melodies don't like to jump around too much. I mean, you can, and it sounds cool to just go up in fourths and fifths, and you can do anything you want. But as a general rule, this is a leap. Now this is kind of a far leap here, so we'd love to have a step, and there's a perfect place for a step right in the middle there. So what interval is that? Well, we have, after a flat third, you have a major third. Then we have the 4, and then the sharp 4 and the 5, or flat 5 and 5. But we'll just call it the sharp 4 for today. It's going to make things a little easier to group those together. So we've got a 4. So what this works is, this is like our first outside step, and it's inside the scale. So you should know that whenever you're playing a pentatonic, that you have this outside availability. Right within the pentatonic gives you, like, that's basically what the pentatonic is. It gives you the chordal framework available in a shape you remember, plus one outside note. And a lot of people end up getting bored with the pentatonic and feel like they're noodling because they're never aware that there is an outside step and an inside. There's a tone in there that's outside the chord tone. So you really want to use that intentionally. When you start using that with that knowledge, the intentionalism means you have that knowledge that that's just an outside step. Everything becomes a little more logical in your lines. Let's hear it. Let's hear it for the boy. Let's hear it for the band. Haven't played it yet. Here we go. Alright, so haven't played it yet. Here it comes. Going away, inside away, and home. So now there's like a little bit more sensibility to your line. It's pretty basic because it's just the very basic, very first step, and it's provided for you right here in the scale shape. But when you're new, nobody tells you this, and you don't know, and you end up noodling it. And it's so simple to get people to start organizing the pentatonic and not noodle. And I don't see any lesson anywhere on YouTube telling anybody this. So remember, you heard it here first. Mind's eye visual guitar methods. All right, thank you very much. So, oh, we're not done. So now we need information about, well, where are our other steps here? What about if we want to add the rest of the scale tones? Is basically we have two more scale steps available, right? Which ones are they? Well, let's look in between here. We've got a choice of the twos right here. In between here, we've got a step. So we inside here is going to be like an outside color, outside color. But here we've got a choice to create another step. Now, whichever one we choose is going to create a half step, but half steps are acceptable. So they're going to be as inside playing. So we're going to need something in this choice box, and then we're going to need something in this choice box. Well, it just so happens that these wide spaces are the same exact wide spaces that you find right here in the pentatonic. Nobody tells you, right? So let's look right here. We have a choice of twos. We have a flat two and a regular two, which you also want to know if your chord has extensions. This is where you're going to find what? The flat 9 and the 9. Wow, really cool, right? So let's give those a little bit of coloring here so they can... Oh God, I got something weird happening here. I've got a sticky... I got a chord here that's being a pest. A Budapest chord. Alright, so back to the video here, folks. Thanks. Let's give this a little color. We're building this lesson on the fly. 9 and 9. So, here we are. Here is our place where we would choose the 2 or the 9. I'm sorry, well, yeah, our 2s or our 9s. And so if we choose a 2, now keep in mind this is also going to define whether this chord is coming from a certain style of scale. So in other words, if I put this decoration in there, I'm going to pigeonhole this chord, because then, like if I put this extension on my chord, right? Let's do that. And what do we got here? So that kind of, I don't think it was the greatest example I could have pulled off there, but that chord with that flat 9 ringing out gave us a scale that gave us the Phrygian sound. So your if you don't know modes or anything about modes or how they could work, well, then you have to go back and learn that. We can't teach that in this lesson, but those who have figured that out, it's about the chord in the background playing. We had an A minor chord and we played this scale. A flat 2. And then I decided to include the, even though we didn't have it in the chord, and it might have been more, everything might have sounded a little more definitive had I added the flat 6 note in there as well, but I didn't. So in theory, I could have put a major 7 in there and made it Lydian dominant, but I'm getting way past the beginners here. But for the people who know, now you know. Anyways, so let's just consider that done. We got the flat 2 and the 2. So if I put a 2 in there, a regular or a 9, played the 9 chord, then in theory I could have made this sound like a major. I could have made it sound like, well, I could have made it sound like, well, Dorian or Aeolian, depending on which one of the sixes I put in there. But that's let's actually do that now. So here we have what's in this choice box. What's always in our choice box for minor? The 2 and the 6. So we've got this here. Let's give it some identifying colorizing. So we've got the choice. We got the 6s right here. And guess what else? So 6 and 6. So you can kind of see here, if I have, now this isn't, definitive. However, if my minor chord has a flat 13, and I'm going to knock that font down just a touch. Just a little too much. I was just listening to that the other day. Some Page and Plant, the Walking into Clarksdale CD. Man, what a great CD that is and was. Or a 13-ish. So if my chord is a minor 13 chord, then I'm going to be playing this flatted 6 in it. Let's say it has a flat 9 and a flat 13 along with a minor. You see a minor on a chord sheet that is a minor flat 13 and flat 9, or minor flat 9 flat 13 is how it would be listed. Not too likely, but you basically also you can see kind of clearly now, you've pigeonholed yourself into a scale shape here. You've got and that would mean you're really just playing a chord that's calling out for the Phrygian scale. Do you have to play the Phrygian scale over it? No. You can come up with something else that you like. I see I colored the wrong ones here, but anyways, you can come up with whatever you like. Maybe harmonic minor suits your flavor and gives you some of those outside and inside tones. Whatever the case is, it's, whatever music, you never know what somebody could be creating or coming up with. But there you have it. And what we've done here is we've plugged in the we haven't, there's notes that you can hang on the outside here. We haven't even talked about those. We've just basically conquered these the choice box here right now. This is like probably the most important notes. So you got your choice box here, because what this is going to do is kind of identify some real outside notes. If your chord has these tones, let's say just the flat 9 and flat 13, you're definitely not going to play these, for whatever reason, are going to sound outside of what your chord flavor is. They're going to be kind of like, why are you playing that when this is what's being called for or called out in the chords of the music, or chords and melody line to really establish something. Now, so those, you could consider those as really outside notes, or avoid notes. If avoid notes exist, those would probably be the most logical way to say avoid notes. But the other way around. So this area is just basically, that's why I call it a choice box, because you're making like a definitive choice here. But now all these other notes can serve as color tones. And, those choices that make up those jazzy choices, it's up to you to fit them in. I would also call these rhythm choices, because they're usually only going to fit in, but could fit in based on a strong sense of rhythm, a strong sense of chord tones landing on strong beats. Really opens up, that's what opens up the door to the players that can use these outside tones. That's the key. That's where they're getting the ability to do this. When you hear a jazz person do any kind of jazz stuff and you're like, whoa, those notes sound so weird. How do they do that? Where's that coming from? You are inclined to always be taught, well, it's this special scale and this special scale, and then you play the special scale and you're like, oh, it doesn't sound like that to me, because they're not telling you this. It's a rhythm choice. That's the secret. Enough said. All right, so, because, jazz people are going to shut me down if I tell them the real secrets. Okay, so, the major third. You're playing a minor chord, probably going to sound pretty awkward to put a major third in there, but maybe not. So we've got the third there. What if we wanted a sharp 4 in our music? Do we get that within the pentatonic scale? We got it right here, folks. You heard it here first. And some of you know the blue note, so we might as well put it there too. You could put it there as the blue note. And what is the blue note? Blue note's really kind of like a flat 5, but we're just calling it, a sharp 4. And then we've got the basically what's left here. We've put this here, sharpened 4, and then the regular 7. Now a minor chord pretty consistently has a flatted 7. When a minor chord has a major 7, that's actually coming from another scale, a scale that has a minor sound but is kind of more melodic, has a little more melody sense than natural minor, is the melodic minor scale. And guess what the melodic minor, the one note difference in a minor chord from melodic minor? Jazzy sound of melodic minor available right there, my friends. So there you have it. That's basically all we need to know for minor. As stated, you have within the pentatonic scale, you have your initial chord shape. You have the possibility of common extensions. What if your chord has a 4? Well, you might find a way to put that in. You might want to use a different shape and use a different part of your fretboard altogether. Totally fine. Oh, speaking of different parts of your fretboard, and let's say this is what you need for D. So you just move this up here to D. D flat. C. Now, you lose a little bit of, if you're down on F, say if your chord is an F, well then you're down here on the first fret. Or E, you gotta use the open, but then you're up here. Well, E is so common, this shape is so commonly used up here. Or D sharp, D. So you get it. Alright, you can move it all around. It's movable. All this stuff is movable to find any note. So anyways, okay. But, to get yourself in the right part of the fretboard, maybe you want to experiment using other shapes. And there's all the other, as you know, these shapes, 1, right, 2, and 3, whatever the other one is, I'm not going to figure it out right now, but those all correspond to a different pentatonic shape. So you can plug this all in, and you can find this big box in any of the 5 pentatonic shapes. Look for yourself. You might have, as a beginner, you might have that, oh yeah, that's right, moment when you realize every shape, even if it's covering the G and B string and it's kind of messed up like this shape. Still has the big box. It's just shifted over the G and B strings. Okay, so let's go to major. And then we'll go to dominant. So major 7, what do we need? Now basically all we need is one note difference. However, to put it in this context, what we really need to do is move our root. And also in this lesson today, what you're going to see is basically that we're using the minor root here, right? And then we're going to show you where the major root is here. I'll show you right now. It's on this flat third. Then we're going to use a root here and a root here. And we're going to basically get to a whole bunch of different types of chords. But this next one here, we're going to put our root right here. And that's going to make major. And let's talk about note placement really quick. Now, that being said, this is going to cover major 7 that we're going to do right now, and then dominant 7. And then it's almost nearly the exact same thing with one little change you're going to see really quick here. And then we're going to use this root and this root to discover two more chord possibilities that are pretty cool and useful to a degree, but not as useful as the top three chords right here. Not as maybe as common, but we're talking some of the maybe Zappa inspired music. We'll use some of these other chords. Um, so let's get into this here then. So what we got here? We'll maybe up here I'll put the notes of the G string here. So we have, of course, we have G, and we're going to call this the yeah, well, I guess yeah, this is the sixth string right here. So I'll just 1, 2, and 3. So if I refer to the G string, I might say the third string. All right. So we have after G is A, we have B. There's no note between B and C. We skip to D, skip to E, F, and back to G. So any if we want any of these major chords, we would move our shape correspondingly, considering this third string root position. So today, where are we? We're on C. This is C, like as if since we kept it in the same space and we're playing major. What's the should also know that it's basically the same thing that's working from here. A minor, C major. But like I said earlier, we're not going to use this root, even though we're going to see it kind of appear here. We'll use this root. All right, cool. So let's fill out our this is what we need then. We need a root, we need a third, we need a 5, and we need a 7. So where are our big spaces? We've got some big spaces. We've got a big space here. We've got a leap here to fill in. And do I got something wrong there? 6, 6, flat 7, 7, and root. Yeah, because we got a half step occurring right here. Okay, let's get into this. So, let's use our octaves to start filling out. Well, let's fill out our basic chord here. So we need our basic chord shape to comp with. So someone calls out C, you could just basically go, okay, here's my C note on the, the lead sheet says C major 7. You need to just do this quick. All right, here's C major 7 because here's what you can comp with because you'll have a root. What else we have? Well, what's always above a root? We said that earlier. Did you remember the 5? All right, what's going to be below the root? Well, this is going to be real easy since we have a simple triad shape here. We need root 3, 5, and guess what's right there? The third. So boom, we've got, and you should have, if you've been doing any studying, you should have like an aha moment there going, oh yeah, that is the triad shape for a major chord. Of those 3 little triad shapes that I just played there. So there they are. Cool. So we've got the this thing right here. And now though, you should say, well, Mark, didn't you say major 7 chord? Don't you kind of need a 7? So yeah, okay, we do need that 7. But notice, like, the interesting thing is, it's the same 3 notes as the minor shape. How can minor be major? But we're just considering the root. So in other words, if I played that A minor sound, yeah. But we change that to jamming to show you the road. All right, so where's that 7? Well, let's talk about our choice boxes here, and let's get our chord tones filled in first. So let's explore the. We've got our comping chord, not made it a 7th yet, but we're gonna get there. Let's get our. Let's explore the pentatonic to find out if it's got all our chord tones in it. So what do we got here next? I don't know. Let's do the easy ones first. An octave away from this root is right here, so we have a root. just like we discussed earlier, where there's our major root that we're just not considering, so we can also know that it's here. And so what's up here? Well, always above a root's a 5. There's our octave from a 5. Okay. Then so here, well, here we have a in our scale, we're going to have that outside tone that's going to be found here, so we're not going to use that right now. So we know that's a 2, right? What's after a root? Flat 2, 2. Okay, so 5, what are we going to have after the 5? We're going to have a 6. So what we got here is also, you might say, hey, isn't that an outside tone too? Well, yes, it sort of is. However, you'll notice that with pentatonic, the major 7 is kind of left out, and because it's a half step uh, tone, and because of that, it kind of uses the 6 instead. So what you really get with a major pentatonic is a major 6 chord available. And using a major 6 chord, that's kind of like the first kind of chord that's going to sound like a 4-note chord. That's as good as the. As a matter of fact, it's that. Because guess what? For octaves, if we have a 6 here, we have a 6 here. So it's actually the inverse of the minor chord, right? So you have the so then you ask, well, then how does anybody know whether it's major or minor? Well, remember the root. Remember the rest of the music playing down low is going to establish the tonal gravity. The lowest note is the gravity, right? The most dense object is the gravitational pull. So there's our 4-note chord. It sounds as chimey and ringy as the 7-note, the major 7. There's our major 7, nice and elegant for sure. But if you were to use a, it's hard to stretch with my gout. God darn. Something like that. Anyways, so you've got a cool spacey, a good inside tone here. So we're not necessarily, yes, it's a scale step, but it's not necessarily an outside scale step. So I like to just consider it as part of the group. All right. And so that being said, we have, we'll fill in the rest here. So what's this direction from a root? Always a 3rd. We know that. What's this going to be? Our 6, because that's A is the 6 of C minor, where we are is root, right? And then so how do we know this one? Well, we're going to know that our outside note in a pentatonic framework of major is our first outside step in the scale is actually the 2. So let's put that down here. And I'll tell you another reason that I think this is really cool, and I think this is kind of why this works, is that we'll paint this color because that's like the outside note. So let's hear that played. It's inside. Let's go outside. Outside. Back in. So I'm going away with a bend, 2 bent, root. So you can see how you can put some sense into just the pentatonic box by once again knowing the outside note in the pentatonic, no matter what chord you're playing. It's in this box. Isn't that wild? Has anybody on YouTube shown you this? Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Methods. All right, so now here's the cool thing about this. we still kind of are thinking, well, yeah, but wouldn't it be cool if the seventh was in there? Wouldn't that make more sense? Well, what this does, the seventh is in our choice box area. So that gives us a choice of sevens, which is going to facilitate our ability to make this dominant seventh. All right? Make it dominant seventh, but we're not doing that yet. So, oops. Let's go back to 2 there. All right. So we'll go right here. Actually, let's fill that. We've got that filled into our pentatonic. So we got that filled in, so we can see we've got, okay, we've got basically a black key, a rhythm step, a high color choice, and then we've got our choice boxes here and here. And our first choice box is filled in since we're making this major 7. Then we've got we're going to use that as our, and that's basically pigeonholed us into this. We're constructing our scale. We're kind of one note shy of a complete scale, and with this major 7, it's kind of pigeonholed us into this scale shape, because there's going to be, a definitive scale for a major 7 chord and a definitive scale for a minor 7, for a dominant 7 chord. So this is where that choice is going to be made, and so that's kind of why the 7 has to be in the choice area, because it gives that opportunity for for that alteration to be made at your beck and call. So our next choice area, so let's kind of fill this in. I always like a strong color, a dark color for the 7s, because it's so close to the root, that I like to put in for our first choice box here. Come on now. We're going to make that, I like to use purple. So we're going to use a kind of this color. Yeah, that's the one I want. Kind of like a little darker than that, but it's not how I have the color thing set up here, so whatever. Now, here, what's our next choice? And so basically what you can see here is with this choice box here, you've got your option. Basically, we can cover dominant 7 right in this sheet here. If I want dominant 7, then I'm going to choose this one instead of this one. And now I've got a dominant 7th chord. Let me do that. I'm going to move the whole thing here down to G and play G dominant 7, because that's real easily to play on the keyboard here. So we're going to go with... nice when I go live on lessons, because then something screws up and I have to sit here and figure out what the hell I just did here. But oh, sorry. No, that's not G dominant 7. That's A. That was A sharp. Yeah, I screwed that up bad. Okay, that's where the issue lies here. So let's go to G. All right, let's actually because G is easy to play on the keyboard. So I guess we'll stick with G here if we can do that again. So now, I was almost gonna land on that 2, and it would have sounded off. Let's hear me. I'm gonna want to land on that 2 and hear how it sounds kind of off. And I gotta set that up again. One more time. was that 2? Sounded kind of lame. There's a 3. Aha, there's the root. But this is the 2. That's a 3 going to 2. See, it doesn't resolve. Or you could use it to resolve if you wanted like some suspense in your resolve. And then you're going to like, take another bar to go to real resolve. You can do that too. So that's why, this teaching can be tricky because there's options with every note and just how and where you're using it. But they're like tools. You gotta you can use a vice grip as a hammer if you need to, but it's best to grab a hammer when you need one. Treat a hammer like a hammer. There's that too. I'm away, coming back to you. All right, so pretty cool. And so basically we've got major 7, and we've got now the choice of dominant 7 as well in our teaching, so we can really move along here and get to this other couple chords. I do have a phone call to make. So 3, what do we have here? Let's find the rest of our choices here. So if I want a flat 9, and what's real, that's kind of common with a flatted 7. Now, this won't really work to grab these extensions or to build your chord shape, and because now this is going to be above the root here, so this is really going to be a sharp 2 considered, or I'm sorry, a flat 3, sharp 2. I mean, that sort of could be happening, but like a sharp 9, or flat 3rd. So it's going to be like that one there, flat 3rd. But here's what I was thinking, actually, for a second, a flat 2. Where are we going to find that? Oh, yeah, it's right here. Flat 2 is right there. So, if my chord had a sharp 9, I might omit the root there and just play the... If I had a dominant sharp 9 chord, I might play a... Even though that flat 7 is kind of above, so that's really working as a flat 2 then. So I might omit that. But it is a little questionable. You may want to find a better shape to really nail the sharp 9 or flat 9 sound. Sorry, let's make that clear up here. Flat 9. 9 is going to be inside our pentatonic shape. All right, so what do we get when we choose? We need to choose a note here to basically complete our 7-note scale. What happens with what we choose in there? Well, we can get a choice of, what do you say? Oh, it's after a 3, a 4, and this time we're definitely going to use a sharp 4. Here's why. If you, for those of you who know, a major scale, or if we're dealing with like a major chord with a major 7, when we use this major 7, you've got basically, you should know if you know your pentatonic, if you know your chord scales from this pentatonic shape, you know that you could have this note and this note, or this note and this note in the major scale. And if you have this choice and this choice, you're playing the major scale with the major chord. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 root. But what if you were playing you were trying to, this major 7 chord was operating as the 4th chord in your scale. And you're like, oh yeah, isn't that Lydian? Isn't that the one with the, it's got that weird note that makes it Lydian. Oh, it's the sharp 4. Hey, that's in our choice box here. We've got a choice of regular major 1 chord, 4 chord. And hey, it's easy to remember. It's using the special 4. 1 chord, 4 chord. So, if our C7 here was the fourth um, chord of the key where, in the key of G. What's going to sound good there? So, anyways, because that note is also going to fit in the framework of the. Right, so yeah, our sharp four. So those are you get the choice of basically major in Lydian in this choice box. So always remember that four, and or if your chord just simply has, we're gonna go four and sharp four. So what? Also, this could represent an upper extension. Do you know what this is? If this is the 9 and this is the 13s right here above the 6, well, that leaves us with what? 11 and a sharp 11, right? And so, if that's the case, give those, somehow I always think of 4s as gray. It's my color tone sense here with intervals. So, if you had your 4, you have your choice. If your chord has, if you're playing a major 11, a major chord with a sharp 11, you basically are pigeonholing your scale. You can see how there's a relation there to Lydian. A sharp 11 is actually suggesting a Lydian scale. Now, hear me clearly. Do you have to use Lydian? Are you imprisoned by the music police, the theory police, if you don't use Lydian? No, absolutely not. You have whatever choice of whatever fits the music you're making. But on a very fundamental level, sharp 11, sharp 4, sharp 4, Lydian, with a major 7. Let's say this was a minor, the flatted 7, or the dominant chord, and you had a sharp 4. Once again, you don't have to use anything I say, but what's going to be fundamentally correct? You should always, I just know when I see, this pentatonic shape and it's got this interval and this interval in the choice box, that's Lydian dominant, a sharp 4 and a flat 7. It's just what it is. It's root. So here's our root. C. This would be C, Lydian dominant. See, it's got that harmonic sound from the harmonic minor. Or is it harmonic minor, harmonic major? We're getting off a theory that I don't have prepared for this lesson, nor memorized like I should. So, but it's one of those, because you know that sound. But you know what? That shape is also in melodic minor, so just ignore me here. But anyways, so I mean, in theory, maybe we're dealing with one of those. It's one of the modes of those scales outside the major tonality. But yeah, there it is. All available. The big takeaway here is it's all available within the same shape that you're discarding as boring. I need to escape the pentatonic box. No, you don't. You just need to learn the tricks of the pentatonic box. So what's our remaining tone here that we're missing? What if we wanted a flat 13? Or a flat 6? It's right there. Boom. So you've got your basically, and as I said before, nothing's changed. These would be like your rhythm steps. Your strong outside colors that are going to sound like your proverbial wrong notes, and the notes that how do the jazz players work them in? They're using the rhythm and balancing the strong notes of the chord, the strongest suggestions on the strongest beats, as as like your first way to do this, then you can experiment on whatever beat you want, but and however you want to do this, whatever you think you can get away with sonically. But uh, you know, basically, fundamentally, strong beats, chord tones, weak beats, outside steps are possible. Um, Getting into, usually like a you see, without any rhythm, it's a little questionable. See, as a pronounced B, then there's a step into there on a color tone. So yeah, all right. And the same is going to work for whatever becomes the outside choice for whatever you have chosen for your choice box. And if you don't want to make any of these choices, you play a pentatonic scale. And you don't have, what are you missing when you have a pentatonic scale? This is what you're missing. So now you know. And that knowledge is all the power you need. So cool. So from there, which I'm just going to show you quick to try to wrap this lesson up in a timely fashion, the final and less useful but still available. And you may want to use, for this next one I'm showing you here, you may actually want to use the neighbor shape here. So I'm going to kind of draw that in too. We got this, we got this, we got this. So we already used this and this. We've already taken up our root positions for major and minor. So we got those out of our choices at the moment. So all we've got left are this one, do that, and this one. Let's see what we get here. Let's see if we can get a suspended chord and an augmented chord of some flavor. Let's try that. So I'm also just gonna, just because when I experimented earlier, I thought this might be a more helpful shape here. So that obviously, as you know, is the neighboring shape to this shape here. So all right, so let's start with this one up here, our rooty root here, our fruity root here. Let's fill in all our intervals. So we've got our root. Let's find out our top three right here. We've got a root. What's always below a root? Always a 4, right? How do I know that here? You know that this is a shape you could know, root 4. 4. Where's the thirds? The thirds are here, major third, flat third. That means on the opposite side you have a flatted 6 and a 6. And then you have, as the tritone, you have the flat 5 or sharp 4, but we'll call this a flat 5 in this example. So that leaves our 7s here, our flatted 7, our 7, and then what's right after the root, the 2s, flat 2 and flat 2. And this is our core interval pattern of our guitar fretboard, unless we're passing the G and B string, then it screws it up. But you can make that alteration pretty quickly. Then, therefore, you can now memorize where all your intervals are supposed to be. So below a root, always a 4. Now, if you go beyond that, you can use some other devices because, well, this doesn't contain the repeating pattern here. But in any event, so we're going to know that we have let's fill in our chord tones first. So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm 99.999% sure that that's going to be the, that's going to be the flatted, that's going to be a 6. Because this is root 246. So like the minor, and since minor and major we're kind of major 6, we're using this interval here too. Let's fill that out here, and then what's that going to be? Well, if that's a root, that's a 4. What's going to be before the 4? 3, 3, 2. That's a 2. So what do we get here with this shape? Root 4, 6, 2. Well, for kind of all intents and purposes, that suggests to me suspended. We've got a, depending on which one we have in our chord, we could have, this could be useful for a suspended 2, sus4 chord, and then we've got the extra 6 in there just for, I don't know, shits and giggles. Let's kind of hear it then. So I need this. So that's going to be a G. Get it down low so it really suggests the root. So it sounds cool. Sounds kind of basic, but pretty cool against the G. Nothing sounds out if we play this pentatonic, basically like A minor pentatonic, but with a G root. Why does it sound good? So let's try this. With my G, let's add in a 2. It likes to resolve to A. There we go, with a really low down G. You're getting that spacey sound. Put a 6 in there. Quickly starts pulling the tonality around. It's a little bit something to pull off there because these same, it's, as you can see, you're using the same. What you can start to see here is the relationships and how like inversions, or how other chords are inversions of other chords. How like a C major 6 is really an A minor jumbled around. It's an inversion of the other chord. So that's why sometimes the ear is pulled. Sometimes it's harder to make these tonalities. But there you have it. We'll fill out the rest here. So we got our. You can see that we would have a root here. We could have our 4 here. 4 is always below the root, right? What's after a 4? We get a 5. Then we get a 2. So the scale we get here is just basically root 2, 4, 5, 6. Root 2, 4, 5, 6. Very useful for a suspended chord of any stripe. So you got something suspended, you can, you throw a pentatonic on it. Now, what if, though, I'll show you some other final thing here. We've got our 5, 6, and our 2 and 4 here. So, if, where was I going with this? If the root is here, and now I want to plug in some other intervals. Let's say I want to plug in the 2 here. Well, I've got basically like a choice here. What's in my choice box here? Well, you should say, well, Mark, isn't that the thirds in the choice box? And what does this make available to us? This is a big deal here. If I'm playing with this suspended tonality, what's really available as a quick movement from suspended? All I have to do is add in one note to go what? What's flat 3? I'm going to make this tonality minor. Let's say I want to move from this suspended sound. I've got this basically G like a this. Then I go. Oh, see, I can add a scale step in there that really matches that minor sound. I took away that suspended, and in my chord I added in a flatted third. So match it with the flatted third. But let's say I was in major or suspended here. And I went. So I just add in the major third to match. So you got a really cool, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this lesson right here is the fact that you can have in your music suspended chord that morphs into minor, suspended chord that morphs into major. I'm kind of wondering how often you could find this in the Grateful Dead's music. And you'll notice that there's these space kind of moments that all of a sudden went into like this, minor jam, or it went into a major jam. I would imagine this is how they were accomplishing that, but hey, don't quote me on that. So, but if they didn't do it, do it yourself. There you go. Make up your own music that does that. You got a really cool device for making music. I think that's a big deal for this lesson, and probably worth right there you clicking down below and going, at least clicking the like button, click the subscribe button, of course, if you like this content and you want to know more and get notified about it, you click that, and you may even want to throw me a coffee because we really need it. All right, so what other choice do we get here then? We can make this a what? From between 6 and root, we could make this minor third with a matching what? Minor 7 to complete the deal. We could make this a major 7 to match our major. So really cool. We could have our. So there was just playing around with the suspended tonality. Now I'm going to suggest. Without even changing that suspended chord, you can suggest these other tonalities with these choices. So I could be here. Let's suggest minor. Then I suggested major. You get that kind of with the suspended chord playing, you actually get the choice in your solo to move from major to minor. That's another cool device to use to keep in your arsenal there. Um, that's why those sound good as walking steps because you're not implying either one in the chord. A suspended doesn't really, like a minor chord kind of suggests that you're playing, even if you're playing a minor triad, the flatted 7 is going to most commonly go with that. Or, in a major triad, a major 7 is going to most commonly go with that. So, or one of those is going to kind of be definitive to pigeonholing your chord, where with suspended, the 7 isn't making any real definitive choice. So you can use it as a somewhat of a walkable chord. So then you can figure out here what you get. You get the sharp 4 flat 5 here. You get a flat 2 here. If you're adding some of these extensions, you're adding ninths or whatever. You know from the lesson that we just went over how to do all that. All right, cool. So let's do one more here because we'll go up here and we'll do it an octave higher up here since I don't have any more sheets available since I used my blank sheet for this example. And you won't know what that means, but it's just basically the how my spreadsheet setup is set up. My spreadsheet system is set up here. All right, so our final root position is here. And what is that going to give us? Okay, so what's always below a root? We're going to have a 4 here. And yeah, that's mom, but mom. Hold on, everybody. We got to take a family break here. And we got to go. Hey, mom, just a few more minutes. It's mom on Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Method. Sorry, everybody. Get an extra 30 seconds or less of your time wasted on my lesson. Sorry. All right. So, root. What do we have here? What's away from a root? Flat third. So that's going to mean that in our area here we have a flat third. So we're kind of playing this is going to be a minor version of a chord. And then what are we going to get up here? We're going to get a sharp 5. So if this is going to be maybe a little bit useless here. I don't know. You'll have to decide. But if you want augmented, at least you've got it pretty much augmented with a minor. And then with a 4. I don't know. But if you want to experiment with different roots and pentatonics, this could fit something. I have no idea. But like an augmented with a that would be like a sharp 9. What if you had an augmented sharp 9 chord? I don't know. You could. Then how do you fit that 4 in there? But with an 11, I have no idea why that chord would exist or if it would ever exist anywhere. But this is the pentatonic you would use for that. So I won't waste too much of your time with this one because it seems a little awkward here. But we'll hear it and hear if it just sounds awful or not, and it probably does. But so with our 4. What do we have after our 4? We have a sharp 4, we have a 5, and we have our augmented 5. Sharp 5, or augmented chord 5, and 5, we have a 6. Well, actually, we're going to have a flat 6, we have a 6, we're going to have a flatted 7 here. That's going to be our outside note, but I'm not so sure about that with this setup here. So from our flat third, what do we have? We have a skip a third, we have a 4, and we can wrap the rest of this up here. We have back to the root here. So let's hear it. So what are we going to need? If we're down here on A minor, so there's our root. We're going to need an E. So let's play this and hear what it to me, it's going to probably sound in theory, this pentatonic shape would fit over an E if I was playing the third chord in C major. We could have this A, what we would call the Aeolian shape, would plug into a E drone, making it the third of the chord, or the third of the scale, third chord of the scale being an E minor chord. So there is some possibility there, but let's hear this. That one, we want this one. Oh yeah, real deep. We gotta put a sharp 5 with that. So first we'll reinforce this. Get that E really reinforced. Now we'll put a sharp 5 with that. So E. We have 2, 2, 3, 4, flat 5, 5. Sharp 5. Well, there's that major third. That didn't sound good. Let's put a flat third in there. Now our pentatonic is fitting pretty well. Well, it fit, and I don't know if you could hear that, but I was playing with the, what we had gone over using this note in this box as like the outside step, and I thought that it really worked to give a little bit of intention to the somewhat ambiguous lines here. And then also using the 4-2 as like an away note. And I think that kind of worked well. But it plugged in. Are you gonna find this note anywhere? Perhaps, but in theory, if I added in the other notes, then there's Phrygian. Here is this should be E major. No, I'm sorry. This would be E Locrian. This is how to toggle between Locrian and Phrygian. Phrygian, Locrian. And you're not probably probably not going to use Locrian very much, but if you did, and you could have a major 2. There's a place in France. So it's just basically minor, root 2, flat 3rd, 4, 5, sharp 5. That's Aeolian. Sharp 5 is going to be your flat 6. In this case, since we're playing a 5, then we're going to call this a flat 6. So probably, that kind of alerts me that maybe this really isn't the fancy, slick way to get to a sharp 5 chord more than it is to just get to Aeolian, get to a, you could even probably more sensibly consider this a flat 6 and a flat 6, because that's going to make a more logical choice box here of a flat 5 or a sharp 5 or a regular 5. And then here you're going to have your flat 2 and 2. Meaning you're going to have some, like we went over, Phrygian choices, Locrian choices, not very common obviously, and then Aeolian choice. And, how do I know that? How did I know? Because of the square here and this note in reference to the square, because I know this. Aeolian. Let me get some capitals going here. Locrian, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian. So we're going to go backwards here. Mixolydian, Lydian. Oh, that's right, screwed up. So that's a repeat, because that's, the 5 frets of your fretboard that are the same, like D to D, the actual note D, but so we have Dorian, Dorian, and then Lydian, and then, sorry, Dorian, Phrygian, then Lydian, the 3, then the 4, then the 5, and back to 6, 7, 1. So, as you can see here, all you need is this knowledge here to go, if my root is here and I'm playing my square of notes here, play this square of notes, the 2 and the 5, I'm playing Aeolian. I'm playing E Aeolian. My root was on an E note, it's E Aeolian. And if I move the square here, then I'm playing this as the root. That's how I knew I was in Locrian. And then when I played this one and this one as the root, I know that I'm actually playing down here, and that was Phrygian. Now, it gets a little complicated. How did you know you were down there? Well, you got to watch some of the... I explained this on my modal lesson, so way back in the channel. And maybe I'll do a modes for 2026 lesson. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do that. That's all I got for this lesson today, to keep it as short as possible. And it's already probably an hour long. Maybe an hour, maybe more. Okay, I appreciate that you were watching. Let me know if you like that I got straight to the point today, because, those lessons are always long. Let me know what you learned. Let me know if you saw a mistake that I need to correct. Show me something. Leave a comment. Engage, because that's awesome too. Click the links in the descriptions. And hey guys, have a great day. I hope this was enjoyable to you. And remember, I'm not always looking at my screen here. So if I went off the screen and I was playing like this and you were like, where's he playing? I'm sorry. I try to do the best I can with this little screen box here. Makes some sense, but the most of my lesson is on this graph paper. That's Mind's Eye Visual Guitar. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.